So hello and welcome to the AFS Technologies Monthly Learning Series. I want to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ian Faith and I will be moderating today's session entitled Removing Analysis Paralysis from Annual Planning. Sheryle, Blasko, Yvonne McClure and Shelley are part of AFS Technologies team and they work in the TPM division. And they're going to present today's webinar, Removing Analysis Paralysis from Annual Planning. So what you'll learn by attending this webinar, TPO and trade, which is Trade Promotion Optimization, is a hot topic for many of today's leading CPG manufacturers. We'll review the annual planning process to help ensure that your team addresses the key factors, the who, the what, the where, the when, the how, to fluidly create an optimized plan for the year to come. So if you're part of an annual planning process team, this is a must-attend webinar for you, and it'll be great to replay it for people within your organization as well who are part of that process. So let me tell you a little bit about our presenters. Sheryle Blasko is the Enterprise Account Director for the TPM division. She has 12 years plus in consumer packaged goods experience with expertise in trade finance, master data and sales operations, which included leading enterprise-level projects and system implementations. Shelley is a solutions engineer for TPM and TPO retail. With 24 years plus experience in CPG industry, with expertise in pricing, brand management, and predictive analytics. Shelley brings a powerful perspective to pricing models and efficiencies and holds an elite certified pricing professionals designation through the Professional Pricing Society. Yvonne McClure is the Enterprise Account Director for the TPM division, with 25 years plus experience in the CPG industry with expertise in sales, customer marketing, and trademark management. Using a strong business acumen, Yvonne is able to provide strategic guidance to organizations looking to improve processes and capitalize on business opportunities. I sort of titled this my Charlie's Angels presentation because I must be Bosley and I'm joined by 3 brilliant women with this. So this is what being purpose-built is all about. As I said, I want us all who's attending on the call to feel that they're part of this webinar. So feel free to interact. And I will hand it over now to Sheryle to get us all started. Hey, Sheryle.
Hey, Ian. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. I thought I'd start with some witty little words of wisdom as it relates to the annual plan. I'm sure at all of your organizations you have a few common quotes. I know in my past, one of the strongest ones we used to always say is failing to plan is planning to fail. And I'd like to say, as much as I love that one, I love the profound words at the bottom of Mike Tyson, which is everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think all of us on the call has those moments where we can recognize arriving at the office and everything seemed to be going as targeted, only to be derailed with an email or a phone call. And as it relates to annual planning, that's what we're here to talk about today. What are some of those common derailers, and how can we avoid them in the future?
Sheryle, it's actually one of the ones on here reminds me of a VC I used to work with who, when we present to him ideas, he would say, is this a plan or is it just a wish? And now I can actually see where he actually got that quote from. That's one of my favorites.
I like that one too. Absolutely.
I've always liked to plan your work and work your plan. That's always been a motto that used a lot in my past experiences.
Well, so now that we have you all settled, here's the agenda for today. Really, we're going to outline the objectives, the purpose of our call. We're going to talk a little bit about corporate objectives and retailer objectives. We're hopefully going to help you outline the roadmap to succeed in your annual planning. We're going to talk about some of the common roadblocks, pitfalls, and watchouts that we've seen along the way, and then how we work with our clients to help clear the road to determine the most effective route towards having a successful annual plan. And then as we conclude today's webinar, we're just going to open up the call to all of you to answer any questions you may have. And as Ian mentioned a moment ago, please enter your questions into the queue as they come up, and we will hopefully have time to address them all at the end. So today's objective, I think Ian outlined it a little bit. We're, as we work to prepare for the annual plan, we want to know the who, what, when, where, and how. So you really want to be able to identify who on your team you need to engage, what level of expertise you expect them to bring to the table. When is the right time to begin the process to ensure that you have everything you need to optimize your plan for the year to come? How can you drive efficiencies in the process? What type of tools do you need to support those efficiencies? And then last, where? And I left this one open because really, as you all know, finding a focused area, a place, sometimes away from the distraction of your desk is probably very key to really focusing on the annual plan and working with the team to really drive a successful result. And then last, we want to be able to provide all of our participants with some of those easy solves to the common roadblocks and pitfalls that we mentioned are common along the process of the annual plan. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shelley and Yvonne, who both have a very rich history, as Ian outlined, in CPG. They've experienced the annual planning process from many different perspectives, having worked in Tier 1 organizations across to Tier 2 and Tier 3. And they've sat where many of you sit today, and hopefully they'll be able to really share some of the insights they've learned along the way.
Thank you,
right.
Sheryle.
So, yeah, thank you, Sheryle. So speaking as it relates to the corporate plan, so this is where many of you think of that as being a top-down plan. And it really encompasses the overarching objectives of an organization as it relates to your growth, the strategies, objectives, and your KPIs are really your strategic measure points. And typically these are done with input from cross-functional teams, marketing, finance, sales management, and it's really most often deployed as a % of growth, and that's really against a commitment that's been made to your board of directors or even your corporation's CEO. And the build on that is really where you're looking for your business to grow from. Is there a competitive assessment that goes along with that? Distribution gains, market entry opportunities, or white space in terms of market activations.
Yvonne, you're right, and along with that corporate plan is, those pieces of the plan that pertain to the retailers. Those are those customer-specific plans where you're going to outline your objectives and your commitments with your retailers, as well as what are the promotional and distributional activities that you're going to have to drive profitability for not only the customer, but for yourself. And those definitely funnel up into that corporate plan and become a very important piece of it.
So interestingly, there was a study done by Mackenzie of over 800 industry executives, and less than half of them indicated that they were at all satisfied with their current AOP planning process, and even less than half of that indicated that they gained any type of major strategic decisions as a result of that planning process. And for many, it's a long, frustrating, arduous process that often doesn't even include many of the key players that are really designed or should be helping accomplish many of those strategic goals. And I know many of you are probably nodding your heads at this point. So our challenge to you today then is to allow you to maybe rethink what that planning process looks like, who should be involved, and what fit really best works for your organization. The approaches are often, as I mentioned earlier, a top-down approach, where it's pushed out from the executive level, a bottom-up, and then, we would challenge you to say, are there more customized or even creative approaches that perhaps you should be considering to help improve that process?
Hey, Yvonne, would it be fair to say then that actually the preparation for the actual planning process itself is somewhat as important as the actual planning process itself? Because obviously, it would sound to me as someone who hasn't been through this that if you don't actually prepare correctly, get the right team, get everything in place properly, you're sort of dooming yourself to somewhat of a failure with this.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and I think it goes back to one of the earlier quotes. Failing to prepare means you're planning to fail, and that's exactly right. It's really the building block of the organizational approach, and the easier that you can pull together the resourcing and the insights as part of building that core plan, then the more strategic you can be on the outputs.
Great, thank you.
And also, Cheryl mentioned earlier about the where. Where do you have this annual planning process? I know back when I was with a CPG company, we would always book a conference room at the corporation site, and we ended up not being able to do that because there were always interruptions. And so we started taking those places off site. So that there could be a lot more focus, and so it can be something as simple as taking a creative approach to where you have your planning process take place.
So, in thinking of in terms of a corporate planning process, right, this is about where you tie in your sales objectives and your spending objectives, and then hopefully that leads to a gap analysis. And I can tell you a holistic TPM tool will allow you to view all of those measures and then quickly get to that analysis, such as, am I really meeting my percent growth, my trade spend objective, my volume or forecast objective? Are those goals really being hit? And then most importantly, if not, what is impeding those objectives?
And, Yvonne, I think it's excellent to have the ability in a TPM solution to plan out these higher level objectives. I can remember back in my CPG days where we had these massive spreadsheets that had tons of tabs along the bottom, one for each retailer. It was put out on a SharePoint site, and everyone who contributed to that had to log in, update their information, and then someone had that glorious task of summing up to get us that total number, and we hoped that the numbers were right, somebody didn't put in too many zeros, or that the formulas were correct, or that the spreadsheet didn't get corrupt. And it's just wonderful to know that now, with a TPM solution, you have a place to put all that in one location that can tie then down to those retailer plans.
Absolutely.
And just as a note for the webinar, all the information in the actual decks that you see here, the screen grabs out of that you see on the screen, they're all hypothetical numbers. Is that correct, ladies?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Next slide. So then we really get to the exercise of bridging the gap. Where do we, taking it from the corporate planning to retailer planning, and let's face it, this is really about meeting somewhere in the middle. So with that, Shelley's going to take us through what some of the obstacles and perhaps the things that you might want to consider to attack and look at retailer planning a bit differently.
Thank you, Yvonne. Yes, there are definitely lots of roadblocks that we seem to encounter when we sit down to do our retailer planning. And I wished I could say that we clear them out of the way and never see them again, but it seems like they always pop up. Some of those are, the inability to be able to plan promotions or spending at indirect customer levels. And that may be a roadblock that's going to continue to pop up until you have a TPM solution, because you just don't have that visibility or ability to plan at that lower level. You can plan to that distributor, but then at that point it's kind of stops. How do I be able to go in and plan down to those indirect customer levels so that I'm not being surprised later when deductions start coming in? Spreadsheet paralysis. That's one that every company seems to face. All kinds of spreadsheets out there that feed into one another. if those get corrupted or they get lost or formulas get wrong, entered incorrectly, could have a lot of information that is misrepresented and a lot of decisions that could be made off of bad data. Along with that goes, the detrimental dependencies with spreadsheet paralysis. You typically have that one individual in the company who is responsible for all those spreadsheets. And if they're out sick or they're on vacation or if they even leave the company, do things just stand still until that next person who fills those shoes knows what they're doing and is able to get in and start working on them?
Yeah, so Shelley, real life example against that, one of the organizations I worked for, an individual was out on leave, and because that was the, wholly dependent person, the sales regional managers were compensated or bonused on contribution margin, and that individual was the only one who had the wherewithal to pull all the necessary spreadsheets together and provide that accountability. And so the organization, or at least the salespeople in the organization, went an entire quarter in the absence of any bonus payments because of that, ultimate dependency. Certainly didn't land.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful. That's definitely not a situation any company wants to find themselves in. Another situation that, I laugh because I've given it an acronym. I call it the Sally Plan, same as last year. This was something that I felt like was just what we did in the company that I used to work for. And then when I transitioned over to software and started working with a lot of different CPG companies, I found that it seemed to be the rule of thumb for most CPG companies, and that is implementing the same retailer plans as last year. I'm going to promote this same group of products this same week within the year at the same price point if possible, because that is what I'm comfortable with. That's what I know is going to respond in this particular manner. My retailer knows how it's going to do. Not being able to feel comfortable thinking outside the box with other promotional options keeps us tied to those Sally plans. Overspending or underspending, both of them can cause you to have real promotional inefficiencies. If you've planned out your spending for the year and you're not even halfway through it and your spending is already at 75%, you've got some serious problems. So being able to really truly analyze that efficiency of that spending. Being able to see things at a multi-level planning or reporting capability. So if I want to plan out my Kroger corporate plan and spread that down to those banners, or if I even want to see my sales at that Kroger corporate level, but then be able to quickly and easily see that information broken down to those lower levels. Being able to do that with the click of a button. Not having to pull together a bunch of spreadsheets that tell me different things that I have to then sum up. Same thing with product groups on the product side. Being able to look at how a whole brand does, or being able to quickly and easily be able to expand down and see how those individual SKUs represent that brand. The inability to be able to draw insights, optimize from available data. Every company is just overloaded with data. We have so much data out there, but what's available? And how do we gain insights from it and optimize? And then the inability to tie your sales performance to your KPIs. And we're going to go through some of these roadblocks or all of these roadblocks and talk about how you clear that roadblock out of the way so that your path is a lot smoother. The ability to plan your promotions and your spending at indirect customer levels. Right now, if you're without any type of a TPM solution and you're relying on spreadsheets, you're planning out your promotions and your spending to those direct retailers and to those distributors, but then for those indirect retailers who purchase from the distributors, that may be where you're lacking visibility, being able to see what's going on or plan those actions. With the correct TPM tool, you have the ability to be able to plan out at that indirect level, as well as be able to report on it and be able to see the spending. So those are key areas that when you're shopping for a TPM solution, you want to make sure that that software provides you with that ability so that you can clear that roadblock out of the way. Solving for that spreadsheet paralysis. Get away from all of those spreadsheets that you're having to keep up. I remember being part of a promotional team where we managed the 80% of our sales, those retailers, all their promotions, and I would go in and do post-promotion ROI every quarter, and it seemed like the moment I got done updating everything so we could see the numbers, it was time to update them again, and didn't really have an opportunity to be able to study the numbers and be able to create actionable analysis. So getting away from all of those spreadsheets and having a tool that keeps all the information in one easily accessible location that all the users can access. Not just that one person who manages the spreadsheets, but anyone within a tool can be able to go in and see where things are.
Shelley, I relate to that in my past where different people had access to different data sources, but having them all integrated into one place really helps drive the effectiveness of your analysis.
Definitely. That Sally planning, that comfort level. There's a lot of comfort that comes with that Sally plan. My same as last year. I'm going to do the same thing because that's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I know. How do you break out of that so that you can do more, thinking outside the box? It's hard to do that when you're doing things in Excel or spreadsheets. Having a TPM solution that allows you to go in and do scenario planning. What would happen if I promoted this item maybe at 2 for 5 instead of 2 for 4. If my volume is really not going to change that dramatically, maybe my spending will be less and I'll still get the same promotional efficiency. Being able to do those promotions that you've laid out in the software and put them in a calendar view so that you can see if you're too heavy in promotions one quarter over another. Be able to see that holistic view of what's going on with that retailer so that you can start to think outside the box and maybe mix things up a little bit. Capitalizing on promotional analysis that's going to drive efficiency. Being able to get quick access to, what did I forecast with all my promotions for not only sales but my total spend, so that as those promotions start getting implemented, I can do quick pulse checks to see how are we tracking against our forecast? How is our spending coming in? Being able to go back and quickly look at clearance of deductions so that we can make sure that we're properly accounting for our spending and that we don't have customers out there who are double dipping, so to speak, sending in duplicate deductions that maybe with a spreadsheet format we have the inability to quickly locate that. We've already covered that deduction. So being able to quickly access information to help us drive better efficiency with our promotions.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Shelley, the one thing that I really like, and you'll showing it even more here on this slide, is again that multi-level ability where not only can you scenario plan and determine if is it a 2 for 4 or 2 for 3, what are my best options, but you can see the effect of that as it rolls throughout the organization. What impact does that have on contribution margin? What is the pack group impact? What is the brand impact? What is the total U.S. profitability impact if you're planning something for a very strategic customer, call it a Kroger or a Safeway, right? And so what you really need is a tool that allows you not only to see the specifics tied to a specific event, but how it rolls across the organization, across the multi-hierarchy levels.
Yes, definitely. And so the ability to be able to not only execute multi-level planning, but also have reporting. If you have a report that has to go out to senior level management that they need to be able to look at total business, but then inevitably they come back and say, we want to also be able to see the different sales divisions, or we want to see how each retailer, is doing within those total sales. That's more spreadsheet work. That's more pulling of information or multiple spreadsheets having to look at. Where in a effective tool, you can go in, create a report that allows you with a click of a button to expand to those lower levels, so that you can quickly and easily see that information, not only from a market standpoint, but also from a product standpoint. and this is probably one of the things that I think we miss out on the most, because we do have that spreadsheet paralysis. We're spending so much time updating our spreadsheets that we don't have the time to analyze and draw insights from that available data, as well as optimize. You know, manufacturer profitability. Are we really looking at, you know, our pre-ROI and our post-ROI? How is our spending tracking against our forecast? Also, simple things like a waterfall analysis or net pricing analysis that's going to be able, with the click of a button, to tell me at the end of the day, what is my spending rate per case and what volume is that delivering? And being able to compare that for a similar product from one retailer to the next. You may be seeing some big differences, and you can start to find out why. Optimizing data.
That's really important for any of the folks that are listening that are in the sales role that get evaluated on contribution margin, because that's a really key element to get to.
Definitely. And something exciting, you know, we're starting to see more of the marrying of TPM and TPO tools. For so long, they've both been standalone systems, with TPO being a very costly, expensive type of software to run. And now we're starting to see some integrations where within a TPM tool you can optimize what is the best promotion, being able to get those modeled lift factors so that if we're trying to determine are we better off promoting at 2 for $4 versus 2 for $5, we can get instant results to be able to help us make those decisions and input our promotional information even that much quicker.
Ladies, do you want to also talk to the Nielsen data that is actually being used within here as well?
Yes, very exciting. AFS has partnered with Nielsen in an alliance to incorporate into our TPM tool the capabilities of optimization. We've given you a little screenshot there that allows you to be able to, while you're planning out your promotion in the TPM tool, be able to quickly enter in information that will help provide modeled lift factors. That information is feeding over from Nielsen, doesn't require a client to be a current customer of Nielsen, and within just a couple of seconds, I think it's 10 seconds or less, being able to get that modeled lift factor that you can then apply with a click of a button to be able to determine what your incremental volume would be. So we're real excited. This is a new alliance. And it is starting to marry together those two important technologies.
Yeah, I think what's important about this is swivel seat ability, right? You can do that within the tool, and as Shelley mentioned, the return is a matter of seconds.
Yes. And the cost, you know, managing two different systems, TPM and TPO, it's very expensive. TPO solutions can be very, very costly for companies. And being able to be more cost effective with both of them in one tool is a great way to proceed. You know, our last roadblock that we're going to talk about clearing the road on is, you know, the ability to tie back your sales performance to your KPIs. You know, within a TPM solution, setting up what those KPIs are, and then being able to go out and tie the actual sales performance to those with rich reporting tools that are going to be able to show you, you know, how did we do against these KPIs, so that you can, at the end of an annual planning year, you can see how you did, and that can help you prepare for the next annual planning process.
So if we think about trade management trends, and this is reported by Gartner, a couple things that we want you to take away with. Number one, the momentum and preference for cloud-based solutions continues to grow, and configurable SaaS or software as a service solutions versus what used to be very lengthy, time-consuming, and expensive custom in-house solutions, today in the SaaS environment really allows you access to seamless upgrades. And importantly, user experience is a key consideration. Make sure you're test driving the tool and getting a real understanding on how quick the responsiveness is and how comfortable the end users are going to be. Also important to understand that you need to have an expert that has lots of experience in your geography so that they can best instill best-in-class practices. And the multi-level capabilities where you can drill down and drill through your data at will is going to be key in terms of its purposefulness and usefulness across your organization. The functionality built around joint business planning is key. Something you may want to look for in a TPM provider is the ability to not only look at your manufacturer profitability, but also your retailer profitability. And if you have something that integrates third-party data, that's going to be a useful element for you going forward. And as Shelley mentioned, an evolution path to TPO extensions, because that's where the space is leading. So a quote that I'll leave you with is the guidance from Gartner is this: don't continue with spreadsheets. TPM is a fully mature technology. There's multiple solutions for any geography, with the resulting transparency and improvement in efficiency against business processes is well worth the investment.
Okay, and for those of you, just to add to that, Yvonne, for those of you who aren't familiar with Gartner, they are the world's leading IT and research advisory company. They're known for delivering technology-related insights to really help organizations, much like yours, to determine a future-proof IT strategy.
You know, and as well, it's one of the situations when I first was being introduced to the world of annual planning and trade promotion management as a skill set. An analogy that came to mind for me was, I remember the days, I must be old enough for this, of having one of those paper maps in the car that you tried to read with your right hand while you were driving with the left and flicking through the pages trying to find out where you're going, to now being able to, with your iPhone, just pull up GPS location and get directions to where you're going, and you're safer on the road, it's more efficient, and I feel for people who are still working on spreadsheets, because it must be, as I say, analogous to driving with a Thomas Guide paper map in their passenger seat.
Right, exactly. Great analogy, and you know, I think it's really all about getting to the end result faster, and then using all of that extra time and effort put toward strategic guidance.
Great. Well, ladies, thank you very much. Let's have a look at the questions we've got coming in. If anyone has any last-minute questions, fire them quickly, because we're at that time now where I have a few to address, but any others, you know, please feel free to fire them away right now. We have a question coming in, and actually we have a great international audience. We have people from all over the world engaging with this, and to all you guys in Europe, good evening to you as well. A question: what's the time length for an annual planning process? Is it something that is, and I'll expand on the question, is it something that I think it's something that's a week long, a month long, 6 months long? Can somebody address that? How about you, Yvonne?
Sure. So a typical annual planning process for most organizations takes anywhere from 3 to 4 months. Now, I would, again, challenge those of you listening to say that most organizations would like that to be more abbreviated, and most scramble at the very end just to pull the numbers together to report back to the board or the CEO as to where they're going to land, and a scant few of them have enough time to really dig in and apply the strategic scrutiny as would probably more benefit the organization. So again, having that information served up in a very concise manner in advance of the annual planning is going to get you to your end game a lot quicker.
And Yvonne, with the companies that you've been engaged with, and obviously you've been engaged from Tier 1 down through Tier 3 companies with this, do they set out to like try and get this completed within like a month, or you know, do they actually even put an actual time frame on this? Because obviously there's an expense to the company with this.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's always a timeline. I would say first blush is usually begins for most organizations in August or September, with October typically being a fairly hard roll-up, or you know, where you at least get to an alignment of a top-down and bottom-up kind of middle ground or bridging the gap, and then typically November would be that bridging the gap exercise, because I can tell you never do they come in and meet exactly in the middle on the first or even the second blush. So yeah, again, typically 2 to 3 months, with most organizations needing to wrap that by early December if they have a fiscal year that begins in January.
Right. Okay. So, and it sort of broaches another one of the questions about optimal time to begin an annual planning process. So, is it dependent on the fiscal year, tax-wise, for a company? Is that how they do it, or could you talk about someone?
It really depends. Ian, I can tell you I have some clients that I even work with now that their fiscal year will run, say mid-year, July to June, but they prefer to do their annual planning to tie to their retailers. One I'm working with right now in particular indicates that they basically have 2 core plans, and their promotional plan is tied to the calendar year because that's when most of their retailers are aligned to. So it certainly varies by organization.
Gotcha. And actually, Shelley, I have a question for you actually, and it was directed to you, which is based on this the Sally planning. How much of the prior year information should we use or should be used, when you're doing that annual planning? Do you disregard it all, or do you include it all? How does a company go about incorporating past year's data?
No, I think you definitely want to look at, what you did last year. If you've got the ability to think outside the box through some form of optimization or a software tool that's going to allow you to be able to do some strategies, maybe it is baby stepping a little bit and starting off for the first time once you've got a tool, being able to take that same plan from last year and tweaking it a little bit. We're all very comfortable in what we do, and maybe just jumping right in the deep end is not the best first step, but taking that plan from last year and tweaking it a little bit, zeroing in, using those insights to be able to help you come up with actionable results. So let's look at this promotion that we've done every week during back to school for the last 5 years, and do we see that the promotion is not as effective as it was once before? So do we maybe possibly need to move that a week? Is back to school time frame looking a little different? Or maybe instead of promoting it at 2 for $4, where we're not really getting the volume impact that we used to get, maybe we promote it at 2 for $5 and possibly not spend as much, but maybe get the same amount of sales revenue. So we can, still reference our plan, but maybe just start to get more comfortable with thinking outside the box a little bit. I remember the corporation that I used to work for, they were very much stuck in that Sally plan, and they always promoted the same items, the same amount of spending, and they noticed over the years that the retailer was not providing those key things that we had wanted. So they were not really giving good secondary display execution. That seemed to slack. It kind of turned into they were just reducing the price off the shelf, and that's really not what we were wanting to do. We were wanting to drive more purchases through secondary displays. So it started with just a slight tweaking of the spend and kind of putting guardrails to that retailer that, if we're only going to get this type of execution, then the spend is going to be this much less versus what we expected to get. So thinking outside the box and getting away from that Sally plan, you don't have to go extreme. You can go a little bit at a time to kind of help you get more comfortable with just doing the same thing all the time.
And Shelley, it actually reminds me of as a follow-up on this, at our user convention in Phoenix this year, we talked about extraneous data being used in different planning, from everything from TPM to retail execution, and looking back at historical data, and even incorporating, like you were talking about, if a back-to-school promotion didn't work, reevaluate. But would they bring in extra information like, oh, look, the weather was terrible at that time of year, or there was a hurricane in that area, or did they bring in extraneous data that would influence that to make better decisions, or to what sort of level depth do they go?
You definitely could, especially if you have products, or you're in an area where weather could be a big indicator. One thing for me that when I was doing post-promotion analysis that I like to spend a lot of time looking at was, through my syndicated data, what was my competition doing that week that I had a promotion? Did by some chance my competition get a promotion as well? Those are all pieces of information that give me insights into why my promotion maybe did not perform as well. If my competition is being promoted at the same time and maybe got better display execution than I did, that's a conversation that I'm going to need to have with my retailer. So bringing in different elements of information other than just what my sales were, I think is very important in order to make really good, actionable decisions for the future.
Great. And Yvonne, one more question for you. If prior year spend is not yet actualized by the time we start the annual plan for next year, how does that impact the planning process?
Right. Well, so again, it probably reiterates the need to have a TPM tool because that will allow you to calculate, and there will be a calculation in there against latest estimates. So you'll always know, and you'll have a running tally of what you planned, what is actualized, and then what your latest trade spend estimate is based upon what's shipped to that client or even to that indirect customer. So that's pretty key, right? And then I might also say that that's relevant even during the course of a promotion, right, to allow you the opportunity to, if you're 2 weeks into a 4-week promotion with a very large customer and it's not panning out, this gives you the opportunity to have that insight as it's running and then reconfigure or redeploy those dollars where you can still make a difference and have a promotional impact. As it relates to your next year planning, again, I think that latest estimate number is going to be very key to kind of continue to roll off of and plan against.
Well, ladies, thank you very much, and to our audience, thank you very much for doing that for us, for attending and being part of this, and firing questions at us. We really do appreciate that. Please feel free once you get the deck to connect with any of the talent that was on this webinar. As I say, these ladies have just a superb amount of years engaged with this and really have a depth of knowledge that, please feel free to try and tap into. Sheryle's contact information is there as well to reach out to her. And also we have a LinkedIn TPM group that there's a link there for it as well. LinkedIn have made it harder to search for these groups. But now if you actually have an invite or the direct contact, everyone who's actually came onto the webinar, if you just apply to join, we'll make sure you guys get approved real quickly. So that includes the questions from the audience, and again, thank you to the ladies for being here today. On behalf of AFS Technologies, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to participate today. As a reminder, we will send out an email which will have a link to the full presentation for your further review. All of the complimentary resources are available on the afsi.com website. So please feel free to get engaged with that. Follow us on LinkedIn. And again, thank you again. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your week. And everybody, goodbye for now. Thanks again so much.